At this station, you'll learn to compare fractions when the denominators are the same. Suppose you had to answer this question. Would you rather eat 2/3 of the Brussels sprouts on your plate or 2/5 of the Brussels sprouts? The answer might be different depending on whether you like Brussels sprouts or not, right? At your station, you have some fraction manipulatives, some colored pencils or markers, and a recording sheet called Comparing Fractions When the Denominators Are the Same. Be sure you can reach all of your materials. Use your fraction manipulatives to make two different wholes that are the same size. One of them should be divided into 3 parts, and the other should be divided into 5 parts. Pause the video while you make the wholes, and then start it again when you're finished. Your manipulatives should look like this. Look at part 1 of your sheet. See the circles at the top? Pause the video and do 2 things. Adjust your manipulatives if you need to so that they match mine, and then partition the circles on your sheet. One should be partitioned into 3 pieces and the other into 5. Remember that partitioning means to divide the whole into equal sized parts. So make your parts as equal size as you can. Use a pencil so you can erase if you need to. And then you can also adjust your models if you need to. So pause the video, adjust your manipulatives to match mine, and then partition the circles in part 1. So one of the circles is divided into 3 pieces, and the other is divided into 5 pieces. The wholes are the same size, but the fractional parts are different sizes. Compare the sizes of the fractional parts. Which whole has larger parts? The whole that's been divided into 3 parts, or the one that's been divided into 5 parts? In the picture, you can see that the thirds are larger than the fifths. Pause the video now and discuss why thirds are larger than fifths when the wholes are the same size. And then write your thinking in part 2 on your sheet. You can start the video again when everyone at your table is finished. Check your paper and see if you wrote something like this. Fifths are smaller than thirds because the whole is divided into 5 parts, and that means that the parts are smaller. Thirds are larger than fifths because the whole is divided into only 3 parts. That makes the parts larger. Now let's look at your fraction models again. Remove pieces from your wholes so that you have 2/3 and 2/5 showing. And then go back to the circles that you partitioned in part 1 and shade them so that you have 2/5 and 2/3 shaded. Pause the video while you're doing these 2 things. Now, which is greater, 2/5 or 2/3? How could you know that 2/3 is greater than 2/5 just by looking at the denominators? Pause the video and discuss this with your team. Why is 2/3 larger than 2/5? How can you know just by looking at the denominators? Pause the video and discuss, and then do part 3. So in part 3, you had to write some comparisons. There are 2 ways to write the comparisons. You can write 2/3 is greater than 2/5, or you can write 2/5 is less than 2/3. Now, You could also fill in these blanks a little in different ways. On the screen, you can see two different ways to fill in the blanks. So I'm going to read them to you. Here's the first one. When the numerators are the same and the denominators are different, the fraction with the bigger denominator is less than the fraction with the smaller denominator. The other way to write it is when the numerators are the same and the denominators are different, the fraction with the smaller denominator is greater than the fraction with the bigger denominator. Now those words can be kind of confusing. So if it is confusing to you guys, stop the video and discuss it. That's perfectly fine. In order to know if you have it written correctly, you have to have all the words in the same order for each one. So in the top one, bigger, less, and smaller, and then the bottom example, smaller, greater, and bigger. So how do you know when a fraction is greater or less than another one? Do you sometimes have trouble remembering which symbol to write? Here is a way to help you remember. Put 2 dots by the largest fraction and 1 dot by the smallest fraction. And then connect the dots to make an inequality. That'll help you remember how to write the symbol if you already know which fraction is larger than the other one. Now you're going to work part 4 with your group. See if you can use mental math to determine which fraction is larger. Once you've finished, you can raise your hands to get the answer key from your teacher. Pause the video and work with your team. Thanks for learning with us.